The government of Canada is killing Canadians, and not just a few, and not just the terminally ill. Over 50,000 so far. 50,000. Any organization that kills 50,000 people is a genocidal organization. Period. And I don't care how you dress it up. That's just a fact. That's like a bottom line on a chart. How many people have you killed? Oh, 50,000. Oh, you're not in the good guy category. Sorry, we can't. We're going to bring you up at The Hague, actually, where you should be. And now, under consideration, apparently next month, is a plan to expand the MAID program, the systematic killing of Canadians, not all of whom are terminally ill, many of whom are just sad because Canadian society has made them sad. They're going to expand that to children. And that's the point at which you have to say, I'm sorry. We're not going to be polite anymore. You literally can't do that. And I don't care if someone, you don't need to be, by the way, a religious freak to think it's wrong for a government to kill people at scale. And I don't care, choice, they'll dress it up. No, it's totally evil, is the truth. And it's deeply revealing of who they are and what they want. It's deeply revealing. The standard of living in Canada, which secretly no American would ever tell you this because no American ever wants to, think about Canada or admit that there are things about Canada that are cooler than the United States, including your Rockies, by the way, which are better. Sorry. But one of the things Canada always had was this incredibly robust middle class. It didn't have these super jagged wealth distributions that the United States had. It was much more like Scandinavia than Dallas. And I personally always liked that. I did. I mean, the downside was some of your, most energetic people left because they wanted to become billionaires, but a lot of really smart people stayed because they liked being around people like them and their neighbors and whatever. That is dying before your eyes. The Canadian standard of living is in free fall at exactly the moment when Canada is importing more people per capita than any nation in the world. It's the highest immigration rate in the world. So this is something that no Canadian will talk about. And you have to ask why. Well, there are two reasons. The first reason is, aforementioned, they don't want to offend anybody, and it's touchy, and no one wants to be called a racist. It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with population numbers and the strain on available resources, public and private. Housing prices, for example. Your healthcare system, of which you were once so proud. It's so overburdened that it's easier to get into the MAID program than it is to schedule a surgery. It's easier to be killed by the government than healed by the government. That's true. Look it up. So it's at exactly that point that they're like, oh, our country is underpopulated. In what sense? Who decided Canada was underpopulated? The second biggest country in the world with 40 million people in it? That sounds like paradise to me. Are you joking? And they're nice people. What is going on? The second reason no one wants to talk about it in Canada is because immigration has been a good thing for Canada over the years. Some of the coolest people in the world have moved to Canada, and the United States, by the way. Immigration is not bad. Many people here are the product of fairly recent immigration. It's good. But like anything in the temporal world, it's not all good. It can be good. It can also be really bad. It can enhance your country. It can destroy your country. Choose. So if you have an immigration policy that makes your country stronger, your economy stronger, your country more cohesive, amen. And you have had that for generations. And everybody in Canada is happy about that. That's not what you have now. You have the wholesale importation of millions of people into your country for no obvious benefit at exactly the time when your housing prices are so out of control. Like, can your kids afford a house? This is true in my country too. And so the question you have to ask is, why is the government doing this? Is there an economic case to be made? Maybe there is. I've never heard it. Maybe there's some central planner who's decided this is going to make us all much happier and much more prosperous. They don't even attempt to convince you of that. They just shout slogans in your face, and if you ask a question, they call you a racist. And if you say, but I'm actually not a racist, and I'm not speaking for myself, I just want to know the answer. Why are you doing this? Without the consent of the governed, it's a decision you made unilaterally, and they won't answer your question. Diversity is our strength. Okay, that may be true. It may not be true. I don't know. It's a metaphysical question, actually. But in practical terms, Why do we have the highest immigration rate in the world? Shut up! And of course, the answer is political power. Political power. This is a democracy. Your citizenship entitles you to choose your leaders. Your vote is valuable because there's a finite supply of those votes. It's very much unlike the Canadian dollar. Right? Or the US dollar, which in a pinch they can just print more of. And then the Canadian dollars you have in your pocket are worth less. Do you know anything about this? Have you heard this principle before? It's called supply and demand. And if you misuse it, if you ignore the most basic law of economics, you wind up with, repeat after me, inflation, with which you are familiar. Just inflation. The same principle holds for citizenship in a democracy. And if you don't like the way that the public votes, import new voters. And that's precisely what they're doing. They're doing that in the United States as well. And here's my point. You're taking it because no one's saying anything. And I'm just warning you that if this was a mistake, if these were policies formulated by people who actually loved you and had just gone off course and were doing the wrong thing, as you often do with your kids. If you have children, you often make the wrong decision with your kids. But you're brought back on course by your love for your children. So over time, you make the right decisions because you're animated for a desire to protect them because you love them. But if you hated your children, all of your mistakes would be in one direction, and that direction would be toward destruction. And there is zero evidence that the Trudeau government loves you. And there's overwhelming evidence that they hate you and your families. How is that not true? If Liberal and NDP politicians are sending fentanyl to your children, if they're trying to add your children to the list of people who can be killed by the state, who aren't even terminally ill, if they are changing the composition of your country without asking your permission, if every communication you have with Ottawa is a lecture about your moral deficiencies, you're a bad person, shut up racist. There's no love at all. There's only contempt. And the reason I'm saying this is not to upset anyone or hurt anyone's feelings, but it's very important. It's the most important thing to understand the terms of the debate and the consequences of its outcome. These are high-stakes questions. You thought Quebec separatism was a big deal. This is a big deal, what you're living through. And not just you, but the entire West. These exact issues mirror those throughout the Anglosphere. That would include the United States and the UK and Australia and New Zealand. And for reasons that I can't fully comprehend, because I am not God, these trends are present in all of those countries at exactly the same time. And those countries are on the brink of becoming not salvageable.